Well, ever since James Gunn took over the DCU, many of us have been wondering what direction they're going. And now Gunn himself has revealed who his 5 pillars of the DC Universe will indeed be, and there's a bit of a surprise on the list. Let's take a couple minutes to break it all down, talk about the 5 pillars, missing characters, and where I think this tells us the DCU is headed. Hey guys, well, it's been a massive few weeks if you're a DC fan. We actually found out recently that James Gunn and Peter Safran have indeed taken over DC Studios, the newly renamed DC Films. But they really haven't given us a lot of indication about what direction they're headed. Now recently, we found out from James Gunn himself who the 5 pillars are going to be that will hold up this new DCU. The list is rather revealing, and I think it might give us a lot of indication of where they're going, not just with who's on the list, but also who's not. And I gotta say, that's a bit of a surprise. So let's break down the list. Now, at the top of the list, pretty clearly given recent news, is Superman. We all know Henry Cavill is back, and honestly, the Superman mythos fills in so many gaps in the overall DC universe, I can totally see why he would be very important. He's also a member of the Trinity, and I think those trinity of characters really are going to be the focus, and it's something that David Zaslav himself has mentioned. You really can't have a DC universe without a Superman, and that's been something that's been missing for a while, and I think James Gunn really does understand. Getting Cavill back into the cape and using Superman to lay out a lot of future stories is going to be really important, and he really should be one of the, if not the top priority. Now, the second one on the list is another obvious one, and that would be Batman. Now, what their intentions on Batman are so far, we really don't know, because DC Universe has, a couple of Batmans. Many fans still would love to see Ben Affleck return as Bruce Wayne, and given that Henry Cavill has recently returned and some of the events going on the Aquaman film, this has left fans with a lot of questions. The upcoming Flash movie has Michael Keaton as Batman, and there was multiple reports that Keaton would be the DCU Batman moving forward. It's unclear if that's still the case, but unfortunately I don't know how cohesive this would make the whole thing. Also, let's consider the Batman movie that was released last year featuring Robert Pattinson. Matt Reeves' project was a huge success and a great box office return, but it's clearly something that probably needs to stand on its own, and I'm not really sure Superman showing up in Gotham City, at least that version of Gotham City, would make a lot of sense. Now, Batman does have, quite honestly, the greatest rogues gallery of all time, so no matter which side of the fence or which version of Batman we're using, I think those characters will play key in the DCU moving forward. Also consider the Bat family. There are multiple characters there that fans have long wanted to see. There's been a long-rumored Nightwing movie, and the establishment of a DCEU Batman and a story to go with him, along with the Bat family, could really grow the overall footprint of the DCU. Batman is probably one of the characters with the most questions moving forward, and I think the team at the top of the DCU needs to clarify what's going on. Now, the third on the list is the remaining character in the Trinity, and that would be Wonder Woman. The first Wonder Woman movie I totally loved and did really, really well at the box office. But I have to say, Wonder Woman 1984 did not land as strongly. The film itself was still fun, but it left something to be desired. But I don't think the stories of the Princess of Themyscira are even remotely over. That film left us with quite a cliffhanger, with the return of Linda Carter as the Amazon Astra. That story clearly has some place it's going, and I'm pretty sure Patty Jenkins and the rest of her team have a plan in place. We also know Jenkins is currently available with her Rogue Squadron movie being cancelled over at Disney, and I have to say I would like to see her finish the trilogy, even though I don't think the second movie landed as well. Wonder Woman is a really important part of the DC universe, and once again she helps establish a lot of mythos that can be carried forward in many places. I don't think this is something that can be skipped, especially the Greek gods, and I think this is something, as far as a pillar goes, will be explored with this character. Now, the next one on James Gunn's list is Aquaman, and given how well the first Aquaman movie did at the box office, this should surprise no one. Aquaman historically is one of the key DC characters. Going all the way back to the original Super Friends show, he was often showcased with the rest of the Trinity. And if I'm being fair, he really does belong in that core group. James Wan and Jason Momoa totally knocked the last movie out of the park. It was a lot of fun, and again, established a lot of DC mythos that I think is going to be really, really important going forward. Now, we get the new Aquaman movie next year, and I think that movie will help establish where we're going moving forward, and I think the future of Jason Momoa as the character is really strong, and I don't see him going anywhere else very fast. Now, when we get to the last character, this is kind of the one that caught me a little off guard as one of the 5 pillars, and that would be Harley Quinn. Now, Harley Quinn has appeared in the DC Films universe quite a few times, making her first appearance in Suicide Squad, then returning in Birds of Prey, and most recently James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Gunn has also made it really clear, even before he took over DC Studios, that he intended on working with Margot Robbie again as Harley Quinn and that she would be returning. Executive buy-in on these projects is always big, and the fact that Gunn is so connected to Harley Quinn really does indicate we will be seeing a lot of her. Now, her as a pillar is an interesting idea. She is typically a villain, but over times on film and in comics, she's clearly become something else. She's hugely popular with fans, especially the animated series. Although they're not going to canonize that animated series, I think it's pretty clear that her relationship with fans is something DC wants to continue to pursue, and that's probably a pretty good choice. Now, that's the 5 pillars, so what about the rest of the characters? You can't help but notice there's some major DC names not on the list. First and foremost, what about the Flash? Well, the lack of the Flash on this list I think is a big telltale. Right now, we're waiting for the Flash to be released next year, and that Flashpoint type event is going to set the stage I think for the new DCU. About a week or so ago, we talked about Ezra Miller's future and what the plans probably were moving forward. You probably should check that video out. I've tried to link it down below, but the short version is we really just don't know yet. There are a couple of paths here, which do involve Ezra Miller getting treatment, staying out of the public spotlight, and then seeing the movie to release. But I think ultimately what's got to happen is the public perception has to stabilize. The criminal trials have not started for Ezra yet, and that could definitely impact that perception. And I think at the end of the day, assuming Ezra does get the treatment and does the things he's supposed to do, public perception is going to be the thing that drives the whole decision, and that's the reason he's not on this list. The Flash does help establish a lot of DC mythos that would be missing, and I don't want to see the Flash go away. I just really think management there is not speaking to it because they simply don't have a plan yet and don't know what they're going to do. Now, I also noticed there's no Shazam or Black Adam, and that drew a lot of questions for me. Peter Safran actually has produced both Shazam movies, so I don't think the character is going anywhere, but it does make me wonder about the future. Now, just because they're not a pillar doesn't mean they're not going to show up in the DC universe. And this is one of those characters that they have established a lot of mythos around, and I don't think they'll toss away. Given how poorly Black Adam has done at the box office, and let's be real, we talked a little bit about this movie being a failure, and it definitely has not recouped financially the way many people had hoped. I do think there's going to be some adjustments moving forward with that overall franchise, and I do have to wonder for a second if they'll sort of keep them segmented off in their own world. I don't expect a Black Adam Superman showdown anytime soon given the numbers. We're going to have to wait and see, but I think these are some of the characters that remain up in the air. Now, the other piece I really see missing here are cosmic elements. Martians and Lanterns, for example, are not even mentioned, but I do think each pillar can be expanded in that direction, particularly with Superman and his ability to interact with space. That might be part of the plan, we don't know yet, but it is a little concerning there's no word on them. I think the reworking of the Jon Stewart Green Lantern series is probably a big telltale, and that series might be getting adjusted specifically because of these new plans. Now, one thing about the pillars I did notice, and in this conversation, was there was no mention of teams. I noticed no Justice League, no Suicide Squad, or anything else mentioned in the article. But since then, David Zaslav mentioned they will be working on a JSA project. Now, what they're doing with that, we'll have to wait and see. I think Aldous Hodge's Hawkman, as well as Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate, were met by fans with universal acclaim, and many people want to see more of these characters. Now, whether we see the return of Cyclone and the Atom, I'm unsure right now, but I do think there is a future for the JSA. We're just going to have to wait and see. I also don't think teams really fall into the sort of pillar category. If we roll back the clock with Marvel, I think that's what they're doing here. We're going to get to know these characters once again before we see them join up, and with each chapter of the story, we'll get new branches from each pillar, setting up new storylines, new characters, and new places to go in the DC universe. Now, it's going to be a long haul over at DC Studios, and I think it won't be until next year after several films release that we get a good idea of what's going on. One thing left completely off this list is Blue Beetle, and I actually think they're waiting to see what the temperature on that movie is going to be to try to figure out where he fits in. Obviously, there's a huge future for DC films, and with James Gunn and Peter Safran in the lead, it appears we're headed to a new direction, and I'm totally looking forward to it. Now, I totally want to know what you guys think about the 5 pillars. DC has a huge future for us, and I'm really wondering which pillar you think will be the most important. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and tell me what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you hit like, click subscribe, and if you don't ring that bell, you won't get any updates. Peace.